All right, you've been watching it happen live right there here in New York City in Trump Tower. Protesters taking to the lobby of that tower. They're calling for the release of Mahmoud Khalil, the anti-Israel activist facing deportation under the Trump administration. All right, it continues as we take over coverage here on the Fox News Channel. I'm Sandra Smith in New York. Hey, John.
Sandra, good to have you back again. I'm John Roberts in Washington, and this is America Reports. Our senior correspondent, Eric Shawn, is at Trump Tower. This group that's engaged in this protest in the basement lobby of Trump Tower there, Eric, is a group that we're very familiar with. We've seen them protest in Grand Central Station before. We've seen them occupy the Cannon Building on the House side here in Washington, D.C. These are leftist Jews, including one, according to the Associated Press, actress Deborah Winger from An Officer and a Gentleman. It would seem that these are American Jews who lean very far left, who find common cause with Palestinians, who have decided to occupy Trump Tower today.
John, the protesters have taken their demonstration and their anger directly to the heart of the Trump organization and to President Trump's home and to his office here at Trump Tower. I'm outside just in the corner of 57th and 5th, where some of the demonstrators here are now beginning to disperse. We have seen, as I'll show you down the street, the entrance to Trump Tower, at least a dozen or so arrests so far of the protesters who came into that pink lobby, and you can see an officer right now escorting someone who has zip ties, handcuffs behind her back. They have the zip ties out. They are taking them to a bus which is around the corner for processing, where they are being arrested. Those are the demonstrators, part of this group, who refuse to leave Trump Tower. They sat down on the pink marbled floor. They chanted. They were cheering. They were talking about freeing Palestine, no walls in Mexico or in the Middle East. And of course, they were also chanting for and supporting Mahmoud Khalil, the leader of the Columbia University protests, who the Trump administration is seeking to deport. The Trump administration says that he is a threat to national security, adverse to U.S. foreign policy, that under Secretary of State Marco Rubio's legal power, he is able to deport him just by fiat, basically, by that. But of course, a federal judge has delayed the deportation at least until sometime next week for arguments back in court next Monday. Meanwhile, that has not stopped. That has only fueled and ignited these protesters in their anger, as you see more being walked out, some with shirts that say Jews for Peace. That is the group that has sponsored this protest. You see the more in their T-shirts. Others are just dressed in civilian outfit. And I asked some of them, why do they come here? And they, of course, said that this is aimed directly at President Trump, who they believe is illegally prosecuting Khalil and has been illegally, in their view, on the side of Israel, which, of course, they do not want, talking about rights of the Palestinian people. So the protest now basically is quieted down, but the arrests are continuing as those inside remain sitting down, willing to be arrested for their cause, as this basically started about an hour or so ago, as they suddenly decided to target Trump Tower, and the police are doing what the NYPD does and is prepared for, arresting those who are breaking the law. John, back to you.
So, Eric, we're watching these live shots inside Trump Tower. Obviously, a huge police presence, as we have seen that building over the past hour that this has been going on. They're still chanting directly at the officers who are have lined up face to face with them. So right now, we're seeing arrests taking place. If we can flash that other live shot I just saw here a moment ago, there's arrests taking place. What can you tell us about how they organized to actually do this?
Well, the group is very organized, and those who decided and agreed to be arrested remained inside, while others, as you can see, came out here to the corner of 57th Street not to be arrested. They were chanting. And the police obviously have a protocol for this. As you can see, one of the protesters is now sitting down on the street. This technically and legally can be considered resisting arrest. When you resist arrest, you don't have to fight back against a police officer. You don't have to punch them. This protester appears to have been sitting down right here on Fifth Avenue, in front of Trump Tower. And let's just wait and see. They'll probably pick that protester up. And that protester, in addition to being charged with civil disobedience and trespassing, will be picked up. As you can see, there is a potential resisting arrest charge right there. You're seeing live right here on the Fox News channel of a protester who not only was willing to be arrested inside, but also started to have her civil disobedience by conducting a resisting arrest count by sitting down on Fifth Avenue outside the street. So it's a very orderly process, actually. And at some points it was celebratory by some of these protesters, because when the arrestees, those who were arrested, were being walked out, the crowd here on the street were cheering and chanting. Some of the protesters who were not arrested and came out of the lobby were waving their hands in the air and smiling and cheering. So the sense here is a mixture of, yes, you have the anger and the outrage that has been simmering here for so long over what they see as the unjust custody of Mahmoud Khalil, but also you have a sense of celebration that their view is being broadcast around the country, and that their voice is being heard by their daring to come into Trump Tower and pick the president's home to stage their sit-in and their protest just now.
Yeah, as we've seen, Eric, with other previous protests from this group, they go into a facility or a building and occupy it and cause a ruckus, and then typically what we've seen in the past, and seems to be following the pattern here, is the police or the Capitol Police or whoever moves in and starts to disperse them. They go pretty peacefully, but they go out in what they believe is a celebration that they got their point across. A very small group there left in the lower lobby of Trump Tower there. The police will likely move them out, and let's hope that it remains peaceful as it has so far. Sandra?
All right, John, let's bring in retired NYPD Inspector Paul Mauro, and we'll get back to Eric Shawn as we continue to watch this play out here in New York City. These protesters are supporting Mahmoud Khalil as they occupy Trump Tower. Seems, Paul, that the police have gotten the situation somewhat under control at the moment. Arrests are being made. Please do give us your observations and what you know about what we're watching happening live.
So Trump Tower has been the focus of a lot of protests down through the years for all the obvious reasons. The police know how to handle this. It looks to be nonviolent. One of the nuances, though, is that this is not Colombia, which means that there is not going to be an agreement, a tacit agreement that's not really publicized, between the complainant, which in the last cases that we've seen has been Columbia University, and the DA's office. Almost certainly Trump Tower, in the person of Donald Trump as the owner, is going to look to press the charges. And in this case, the charges they're not going to be just things like disorderly conduct, et cetera, because you can actually characterize the Trump Tower building as a dwelling. There are people living there. And so you get into potentially an A misdemeanor for trespass, criminal trespass. And you know, you can put these charges on people and you can start to round them up. You can start to get to know who the leaders are, et cetera. And here's my question. I've dwelt on it a lot in the various appearances relative to the things at Columbia. Who are these people and who's funding them? Because I don't feel like we really have a handle on who is spurring it, how it's being financed, why the placards are built are up the next day, the T-shirts are printed, et cetera. It seems to be very, very organized. And according to some of the reporting that we've seen, not just in the conservative media, but across the board, there are a lot of NGOs involved, including some that have contact with the nation of Iran, for whom this kind of thing works. So I think that you're going to see this is going to go on for 4 years now. Every time Trump does something, they're going to protest. So I think this is, in this case, it could potentially escalate. And if Alvin Bragg doesn't drop the charges, you actually have a way in on some of these people to start to know who they are and who's funding them.
Yeah, well, again, this is listed as Jewish Voice for Peace in several reports, a well-known activist organization that actually has members, takes dues from those members, probably has broader support as well. They are Jews who support the liberation of Palestinians. We've seen them in the wake of October the 7th calling for a ceasefire and an end to the war in Gaza. So I would expect that now throwing in with Mahmoud Khalil, Paul, is just for this group at least, a logical extension of what they believe in.
It does feel that way. And all the groups work together, we should clarify. So, they're all under a coalition. There's something like 100 groups. In New York City alone, there's something like 1,000 NGOs, literally over 1,000, that are part of the various coalitions. And they come and they go, and it's all very performative. The thing is, they don't take much of a sanction. As I said, in Colombia, they did all kinds of damage. Here, they are just occupying essentially a lobby at Trump Tower. But at Columbia, they took over Hamilton Hall. They did all kinds of damage. They reportedly detained a custodian against his will. There should have been serious charges there. And there should have been federal level investigations so that not only we would know who they are and the funding could be investigated, but now, as you talk about Mahmoud Khalil, the Trump administration would have that intelligence to lean on to show Judge Furman in court. Now, I don't know that they don't have it, and they may have been able to scramble something together, but the Trump administration has only been with us for, 6 weeks? And I don't get the impression, nobody I know has gotten the impression, that the Biden administration did that kind of a penetrative investigation. So you don't know how much we know. Some of that comes down to NYPD intel. Some of it, and the reason that matters, by the way, is you can get out in front of some of this stuff. This one doesn't look to be nonviolent and punch it that way. But if you know the groups, if you know how to follow them on open source media or otherwise, you can prevent these sorts of things and you can prevent them from escalating. Now, in this case, there is a nuance, John. They're going to potentially have the names of all of these people from the arrests. And as I said, this is not Colombia. The Trump people, the Trump organization, can now get those names. Then you have the potential for a civil action here to go after the people that are doing this and the funding mechanisms, because the damages here are that they have disrupted Donald Trump's business. There's a restaurant in that lobby and there are other businesses. You can go after them for monetary damages. These are the kinds of things that are never done. There's never any repercussion. And as a result, all of this feels to these students like just another day at school.
Really interesting perspective on that, Paul. So as we watch this happen and we realize this is a pretty heavily guarded building, many of us walk by or drive by this building several times a week. How do you manage how do you figure that they managed to protect this from happening again? And how do you think it happened in the first place?
Well, that's a very salient point, Sandra, because what this means now is, I'm actually surprised they got inside, because the NYPD has been doing this stuff forever, as I say, and they're aware of the fact that Trump Tower is a hot spot. But what that means now going forward, things in the police world very often are reactive. And what's going to happen now is you're going to have a heavier detail, almost certainly permanently posted to Trump Tower. And right now, the NYPD is down thousands of cops as it is. They're very shorthanded. The people are not taking the jobs. They have retention and recruitment problems. And now you're going to have a detail that's going to be almost certainly posted on the street. You'll probably have marked cars. The precinct involved here is going to have that headache. And you're going to have to be in contact regularly with the security people at Trump Tower. Now, look, this gets service protection anyway, right? It's one of the places that the president has a residence. But I can just tell you, for the police, it's just another headache, as it is up at Columbia. It's the job of the police. I get it. But this is, once again, another thing that happens in the city with no repercussion. Everybody, by the way, is going to sue the police. They're going to say the zip ties were too tight. We didn't like the way the arrest processing went. The judges tend to side with them. They settle. They make money, and it goes right back into the hopper to continue the cycle of professional protesters who organize all of this stuff. And the cycle continues, and that's why it goes on, because there's really never a repercussion.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul, for joining us.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.